is going ham. What's up, guys? Drago 2020 here. Today, we're doing the tier list. We are finally here. The final video of this series, or at least the first season of this series. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with, like, capabilities of characters in Genshin, but I'm going to be taking a break on it for a little while. I don't know exactly how long. I do have the next video in the series already thought up, but nothing on paper yet. So we're gonna be getting right into this. Barber tier, I don't think anyone's gonna really care, except for maybe you and you. I've already explained in my previous tier list why I put her here, so I might play that here. Alright, we back? Alright, continue on. By the way, if I seem like let's kind of get this over with, it's because this is take, hold on a sec, this is take what? Give me a second. What take would this be? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, well, 7. Yep. This is take 7. Take 7. So you are yokai. I know that they're really strong in the lore. I don't know specifically what yokai she is. Well, she's a cat, but she's not a katsune, right? That's a fox. And we got Amber and Kali right here. Amber, the reason why I put her here because of what she did in that comic strip. I might put that here. Amber and Amber's Kali. I remember in the comic strip I saw she was able to take down something as big as a lava troll, but it was like a robot. I don't know if I'll be able to put it on screen. I don't even know where I would find that, but she took that down by herself. And Kali, now that she no longer has the sickness, she should be able to scale to something like that. In fact, you could argue that because of her kit in game, you could argue that she's better than Amber, because that boomerang is more effective than the Baron Bunny. Even though the Baron Bunny technically does more damage, the Baron Bunny sits there and dances and distracts people, and then it blows up. If someone is smart, they won't get caught by that. But I literally have seen treasure hoarders try to swing at that thing. I don't know why. They should be smart enough to know that it won't attack them. And alright, we back. So that thing I feel like is stronger than a rune grader. And those things are really strong. Like rune graders, they're capable of running so fast they ignite the air, like a meteor entering the atmosphere. That's how fast those things are. She was able to outmuscle that, at least periodically. And I feel like she should scale. If she's trying to be like Amber, she should scale. These two are Fatui. They're mostly feetless. I have not seen anything, but because they're Fatui and their mother is specifically the Knave, I decided to put them here. Okay, I feel like these two are feetless. I haven't seen anything. You, for as long as she's been around, she's mostly feetless as well. Him, he's somewhat feetless, but I do feel like all of these characters are stronger than everyone else here, because you can argue these two adventurers, but these people right here are not adventurers. They're not adventurers at all. But I feel like she's faster than these two. If these two were to fight her, if either one, I feel like they would beat her. But in terms of like all around how strong she is, I feel like she's better than them. She has better range. She has Oz. She can traverse the entire map with Oz if she wanted to. Well, not the entire map of Tavant, but in terms of Mondstadt. In her initial intro scene, I might place it here, but we saw her like rocket in and create like this sonic boom. I've never seen anything from Razor or Bennett of them doing that. In fact, I never even saw them break the spell and barrier even once. Yeah, Official's stronger than the two of them. I feel like she would beat him. I mean, he's, well, I mean, considering that he's above these two, or these three, in that one cutscene with the Wanderer and Sino, he was kind of like able to react to them, even though he's basically being drug around. I mean, it's something. It doesn't put him any higher than where he is, though. I don't know if anybody's going to debate these characters, except for Hatsumi Miku right there. So moving on to Klee tier. By the way, notice how the characters that are named after their tier, they're not number one. It just to get you an idea, because I think Diona's an adventurer. Yeah, I think Diona's an adventurer, so I decided to give her the name of this tier. Amber, I think she's like a nice little bonus, but she's also kind of like an adventurer. She's very similar. This used to be mostly the adventurers tier until I ranked these people. So, anyways, back on topic. Aloy. We have to power scale her out of game. Go off of what she can do in Horizon Zero Dawn. Ian and I played Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West. She can take down giant building-sized robots. And some of these robots are mini-bosses. So I know Aloy should be able to take down one of those things by herself, so long as she has her bow. Now do I sub-bosses like the Regispines, the Great Wolf Lord, she should be able to handle by herself. She's capable of taking down giant robots that can carve the land. She has durability. She's able to like somehow tank the saw blades. I don't know how you do that. Same how you hit a person with a sword and it just acts like a blunt object. Klee, she literally has like the intro to her teaser stating all the things that she has done. I might put that here. As for Klee, she might be, in terms of raw damage, the most powerful here, but in terms of durability, she might actually be the lowest. The thing with Klee is there are multiple statements where they say that she could destroy entire either mountainsides or hillsides throughout Mondstadt. And when you consider that they have to keep a close eye on her because they actually think that she can do that, it speaks volumes for how much power. If it wasn't for the fact that she was like 5 years old, it was tiny compared to literally everybody else in this tier, she might actually be in the next tier over. Alright, we back? Good. Him. I wanted to put him up here, but These characters up here are just built different, I feel like. I mean, if you know the lore behind him, I feel like he should like slap most other characters here except for this guy. I think he might get outmaneuvered by this guy. She's more powerful, like physically more powerful than these people, and she's more durable. She might be the fastest in this tier. What's her name? Sayu. Yes. Sayu. Might be the fastest person in this tier. I feel like he might have better dexterity than him, but that's saying something. I feel like his weapons are a little bit more attack potent versus he's literally a flamethrower, right? Yeah. If this guy was as smart as this person right here, he would be up here. Right. He might be in front of... I'll go over it when I get to this tier. Number 1. This whole tier. I'll play in that little section that I talked about her, or any section that I talked about her right here. The thing is literally called a vision. Now there's another definition for vision, and it's the one that has to do for sight. As we see for Dendro and Hydro characters, they're able to perceive things differently from the rest of the people. As for someone like Mona, she can literally predict the future, but to a certain extent. She has her limits, but the most important thing for a versus match is that she seems to have her own type of spider sense. So she'll know if something bad is about to happen. For example, that scene with the Wanderer. She didn't have any evidence or any suspicion of the guy whatsoever, yet she immediately assumed that he was a Fatui Harbinger and was correct. This was all gathered in a span of literal seconds, and immediately she cooked up a plan to get out of a bad situation. I have an idea on how Mona's precog works, but first I need to talk about another ability that she has, and that is to place an omen on someone. I looked up the definition of omen out of curiosity. The definition of omen is an event regarded as a potent of good and evil. In Genshin Impact, an omen can be used to buff a character, but with this definition, an omen can be used to perceive danger before it happens. What I'm implying here is that Mona applies this omen to herself to give herself precog. The example where I talked about her discerning that the Wanderer was a Fatui Harbinger, that was something else. Here's what I think happened. Whenever the omen detects something severe, like life-threatening, it activates her divination and tells her exactly what's wrong. This does take time though. As you saw, he got pretty close before Mona started to enact her plan to get everyone out, but it's extremely powerful. Being able to tell that something bad is going to happen and what exactly is going to happen is impressive. I'm just going to say this right now. Mona as a character is completely underrated. The only thing she struggles with is power. I'll detail this in a Mona specific video or in the first versus match for her in the future. Just know that I have a tier named after her in my original tier list video because she's the perfect poster girl for most characters in this tier. Her and Hu Tao. This means that she can set up something that she knows you're going to do in the future and then defeat you. Though this doesn't guarantee victory, she's extremely threatening to deal with. But it might also end up showing that there's nothing that she can do to actually win, which can actually end up being a nerf and cause them to lose because of that. It can happen. Nelsis. Alright, we back? Good. This character literally knocks the soul out of people. G stuff. And then Hu Tao, she's the strongest in this tier. She's in this tier and not one below it because she can teleport, and in her elemental burst, she straight up slaps the soul out of the person. Mona doesn't do that. Quite literally no one else in the game does that except for her. And she does it like casually. And you can see that happening in her elemental burst, because you literally see like a second red or orangish image of the person just getting smacked by the ghost. So she literally is Doctor Strange, but a kid version that's whack. So that's why she's in this tier. This character, I mean, I feel like she should be physically stronger than every character here, except for Arataki Ito. That's impressive, right? And that shield is extremely durable. It can be extremely damaging too. If you've played her or you main her like I do, you would know her capabilities, right? I felt okay putting her above him, but these two are very similar. Her brother is Ayato, and he's up here, right? In terms of speed, he's faster than her, and he's a master in the type of combat or the style of combat that he uses. So I feel like she got better training than literally if this guy went to Ayato for training, because she's been around him for a way longer. He's her brother, right? So I feel like she's better training. This guy could literally mix every character from here down, except for you. This guy has a lot of mix potential. But this character right here has, besides Hu Tao, has the highest AP in this tier. Those fireworks that we see in her trailer, that translates to what she can do in battle. Because she doesn't do it, but it doesn't mean she can't do it. It's essentially strapping a massive firework to her bow and then launching it and imbuing it with pyro. And it's somewhat implied that she's supposed to be like a mentor to Klee. So it's like implied that she's what Klee is supposed to work up to be. And I feel like that would imply that the scaling for Klee applies for her too. It's just, she's just so much better. I'm gonna play in everything that I said about her, like right here. Next up, we've got Yoimiya. Now, the reason why I put her in this tier is because those fireworks that we see in those cutscenes, she uses those in battle. And that whole firework display is pretty much what it looks like for her to fight. At least when she gets serious. So, the fact that she enhances her arrows with pyro means that those explosions are much more powerful. And they do a lot more damage. So she by herself might actually be able to take out an entire hillside or carve out mountains just by herself. Alright, we back? Good. This guy fought the Golden Wolf Lord. I don't know if any other character... Well, I think I'll throw you and up to here would be able to take on, impossibly him, would be able to take on the Golden Wolf Lord. I'll put in a clip of what I'm talking about here. Most of the light speed attacks in game come from something that is A, supposed to protect something on the divine level, B, something on the divine level, or C, something alien that's not of this world. The Golden Wolf Lord is some kind of deity from another world, so it's alien, and it is seen as a deity. Golden Wolf Lord, his attack is literally called Laser Beam. Alright, we back? Good. He fought that. These three right here are very similar, but she's the fastest. Just thought of something. This character blitzed the Traveler. I haven't seen anything from her that implies that she can do the same. This character, she literally is the teleports behind you, nothing personal, kid type deal. And she has speed that possibly is the speed of light, or relativistics to that. Because in order to blitz the Traveler how she did, you would have to be around that speed, right? Like, I'll put in what I calc for the Traveler right here. In order to establish a speed, I need to use a visual marker to determine how fast the Traveler is. And I use lightning for this. Lightning to the Traveler travels in slow motion.
Alright, so this is take 3. I finally found a clip to adequately describe what I was talking about. Right now you should be seeing lightning strike the ground. It should take around 3 seconds to hit the ground. Keep this in mind for what I'm about to say in a minute.
So I gave him a 5 to 10 times increase from the speed of lightning. The speed of lightning is 1/3 the speed of light. So 5 times 1/3, that is 1 2/3. So he's 2/3 faster than the speed of light. And if I'm using the 10 times multiplier, he is 3 1/3 faster than the speed of light. Now this got overshadowed by Tignari and Dea. When they dodged lightning, that came from the Wanderer. Now this lightning was amped because it came from someone who was wielding a Gnosis, which is much stronger than a Vision. So this lightning was totally amped. And Tignari is nowhere near the Wanderer, even without him having Gnosis, because the Wanderer scales to the Traveler, at least at the time of him having Dendro. So I increased this to 15 to 20 times the speed of lightning. And for the Traveler, we have 5 times speed of light and 6 to the 2/3 the speed of light. I forgot to bring this up. Normal lightning doesn't obliterate people like this. In real life, a man was struck 7 times over the course of his lifetime and only died because of the mental issues that he sustained from the brain damage it possibly caused. And the Wanderer created the mech to become a deity. Since the Wanderer knows all about that, he would have the mech built to meet the basic standards. This is extremely important because in one of the quests where the Wanderer went back in time and fought himself, the fake Wanderer launched a laser beam at the Traveler. The Wanderer saw it in slow motion, got a "I need to protect my friends" amp, and then blitzed both the Traveler and the laser at the same time and stopped it. And he literally did like a JoJo pose afterwards. So either he was trying to look cool or that was a casual light speed feat. And finally, not all lasers are the same. Depending on the power source, the laser could be more powerful than the rest. So the most powerful laser that I have right now that I could find is the Wanderer when he was an Archon, and the weakest is probably the Primal Construct. Alright, so let's apply these feats to cutscenes and in-game lore. There have been 2 occasions where an ally fighting alongside the Traveler had to stop a blitz attempt that was going to seriously damage the Traveler. That is when he was fighting the Wanderer when he was an Archon, and when the Raiden Shogun made a blitz attempt at him after he left the palace where the Raiden Shogun lives. If you apply the "this situation looks like that situation," so these 2 might be similar. Both the laser and the Raiden Shogun were moving at the speed of light. But the thing is, we know exactly how fast the Raiden Shogun and A are, and we know that A was holding back when she was making that blitz attempt. We don't know if the mech the Wanderer was fighting and was holding back. And in my initial recording for this, I said that A and the Raiden Shogun do not scale to the Traveler at all because they scale far above them. Before we move... Alright, we back? Good. Now in that video, I went on to detail what kind of attacks the Traveler is capable of dodging and dealing with laser beams. I will put in that whole section, what I talked about laser beams, right here. Let's start with the attacks that are called a laser. Lasers are light beams. Why? Well, laser is an acronym. It stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. We will also be going off of the word beam. For example, there's going to be an enemy that launches an attack that's a beam of energy. The definition of beam is a ray or shaft of light. Even something like a radio signal or a broadcast. So whenever someone says like a beam of fire or a beam of water, they're using the term to compare how fast the water and fire is being spewed out to light, which is really fast, but it's a hyperbole. So when I say beam here, it's specifically a ray or shaft of light. So now that I got that out of the way, let's start listing. Alright, we back? Good. Alright, so... in terms of intelligence, I feel like she's smarter. But in terms of like physical combat, I feel like she's better. In terms of like power, I feel like they're relative, but I feel like she'd be able to apply it better because she literally spends all her time in the kitchen. But in like some media or promotional material, we do see that she is quite dexterous, right? And she is quite fast. I may have to revisit some of the interactions between Hu Tao and Song Ling, but just know that in terms of like martial prowess and speed, Hu Tao and Song Ling I feel like should be around the same. In terms of AP, it's not even close, but everything besides that, I feel like Song Ling should be okay. This guy, I'm gonna play in all of the clips that I talked about him right here. The amount of power I'm going to mention here is to only serve as a reference on how difficult what Shao did was, not to scale Shao to this character. Honestly, it's not even close. It took everything Arataki Ito had to break through that one boulder in that pocket dimension in the chasm. That's because the walls were the edges of the dimension and it was constantly shifting. The fact that Ito was able to overpower this one boulder means either it was meant for him to do that, or he was so powerful he was able to overpower a small portion of that pocket dimension. Either way, he was unconscious for the rest of the trip after doing this, and he's considered a powerhouse. We back? Alright, good. We're moving on. Alright. I'm going to explain my reasoning with this guy later. But first, let's explain this character and down. Well, actually, let's work our way up to that. Diluc, Rasley, I feel like they performed a feat that's very similar to each other. In my Diluc versus, Tartag video, I'm going to go over how strong I feel like Diluc is compared to Tartag. And I'm going to talk about a special thing that I'm going to be doing with him. Risley, we saw him. She literally teamed up with this guy, so their AP is around the same. You. And you. Give me a sec. Blocking a single shot from the Ren Shogun. It was a blitz attempt meant to kill the traveler. It was compared to the strike that ended Hypthon. If I can find that dialogue, I will put that in here. You are faster than this guy in terms of movement speed. In fact, I feel like in terms of combat speed too. She's more mobile. I feel like she would blitz him like a bunch of times. Because if you were to like look at his normal attacks with his skill up, he is standing still, completely still. Versus her, she literally teleports behind people or appears behind people in both her normal attacks, her skill, and her burst. So I feel like that's enough evidence to say that I should put her above him. And to drive it home, his burst is literally making it rain, of which those raindrops are razor blades, by the way, which is absolute terrible. That's probably the worst way to go. One of the worst ways. But in terms of like power scaling, she creates like literal like clones of herself that dash in towards her enemy as she's like flying around the battlefield in her burst. In her skill, she claims that she can move at the speed of light. So considering that the skill is just like a casual thing that she does, you can say that she's moving faster with her burst up. So she actually has light speed scaling. And anyone who I feel like is above her should also have light speed scaling. You're here because you're a Tengu, but I feel like in terms of AP and stuff like, well, actually, we're doing that because she's a Tengu and he's a normal person. Usually characters who are like a part of a mythological thing, they have like extra powers granted to them. Like, let's see if I can find someone in the lore here that's a good example of this. You. Even her. So, in fact, it's actually stated with this character right here that there are people with like extended lifespans, and there's things that you can do to alter the body beyond what is normal. So I feel like it's solid to put her here. It's definitely not solid to put her above here, though. In fact, Traveler fought against Senora. Same Traveler fought against Ren Shogun, though he lost. He was still able to fight her for a period of time. And Kazuha blocked a single strike, implying that the Kazuha scales to like a weaker Traveler at some point. Then you have her that was literally laid out like a Family Guy character after just a couple minutes of like talking to Senora. So I feel like it's solid that she's here, but she's not above these two. I feel like in terms of jobs, he has a bigger like he's a general, and I think she's like a secret agent or something. So these two are actually, well, these four are actually very similar to each other in terms of like their job and their role. But you, and even you they're similar in their role in their jobs. But I feel like she's faster, but she hits way harder. I actually have her on my account. Every time I use her in the Spiral Abyss, she hits harder than this person right here. And they're both C0. And they're both crowned where it matters. She's triple crowned. She's singular crowned, only crowned at burst. Her skill I didn't need to crown, let alone her normal attacks. But every single time, she is the hardest hitter on my account. Her, Hu Tao, and Tartag are the OG nukes. These are like the big three that everyone talked about. That means something. But power isn't everything, but I feel like she has that though. I feel like she has speed though. Wait a minute. Them swords that she creates, they kind of remind me of the rain swords. He is feetless. She is not. In fact, because of that, I might just go ahead. Might just go ahead and do this. He has scaling to Diluc. Diluc and him scale. They're close. Oh boy, people are gonna be pissed. He's feetless, remember. He's not going any lower than this. Alright, I'm gonna put in some stuff that solidifies her placement here. Right here. Alright guys, Drago 2020 here. This is future Drago 2020. I decided to move Eula all the way up here. I initially had her behind Sarah, but I also had some time to think about why does Eula fight, and why do these two people fight? She wants to be besides the Shogun. She wants to be as close to the Shogun as possible. You could imply that technically would drive her scaling, and I could do this, right? But the reason why I don't is because of what I said earlier about Senora. So my reasoning for bringing her all the way up behind Kazuha is for this reason. Their motivations for power. Kaching, she has a motivation. She's trying to be the new future for Leeway, right? And they're meant to act in place of like Rex and stuff, and the Adapti and stuff like that. My take on it, there's another take that I have to consider for specifically this tier. As I said for Diluc, he, in terms of attack potency skills, above Ningguang. And I said that he should at least be double in terms of like energy output by himself. And I also said that she scales to Diluc, that Jean scales to Diluc. And they kind of have roundabout scaling to Venti and the Traveler around this point. Well, around the point where they fought Dvalin. So you have these two in terms of attack potency, plus a Traveler, like high damage numbers. So the ceiling in terms of power in Mondstadt, in spite of the narrative in Leeway, is higher. And I have recently come across some dialogue from Eula herself saying things like, oh, maybe I can take on the acting Grandmaster or something like that. I mean, maybe she could be gassing herself up. I have the game open real quick. I'm going to read you what she says. Because I have the character. And I think I triple crowned her. Here it is. Excellent. The unstoppable power of an immovable glacier dwells within me now, and no acting Grandmaster or acting Grandmaster otherwise can stand in my way. There is no time to delay. I must devise my plan and unleash my attack. Once I have crushed the Knights of Avonius beneath my heel, my next target is you. Don't try to run. Stand beside me and witness all that must come to pass. So those were her words. Now you could say that she's gassing herself up, and she does that a lot. But she should know that Jean fought Dvalin, right? And she should know of Dvalin's power from just simply being in the city of Mondstadt during when he was just going crazy, right? I'm going to come back real quick. I'm gonna quick Google something. Sorry for the wait. I thought up of something, but it went nowhere. Alright, so even though the narrative in Leeway is that this guy's gone, we must fend for ourselves now. Even with that narrative, the damage numbers, the actual numbers that they're able to put out is less than the top 3 here, believe it or not. So here and here, these are the like number 1, number 2 in Mondstadt, possibly number 3 or wherever you want to rank them. So in terms of damage, people would have that to scale to. So if the ceiling is that high, people will be like, okay, if I'm going to climb up, I need to get this high in order to make it here. That would put her above Kaching in terms of attack potency. In terms of speed, I feel like it's not even close. But I also want to read you this because I also have the game open right now. How's it? Her hobbies. In her hobbies, she very casually states that she likes diving into the lake, into the foot. Diving into the lake at the. Alright. She likes diving into the lake at the foot of Dragonspine. Let me try to find that on the map. Okay, I see it. Alright, I see where the lake is. Alright, to give you some insight on Dragonspine itself, The place is like in a permanent winter because of Durin and him dying there, and his blood and venom going into the ground and making it extremely cold. Like, this place is so cold. If you stand still for too long, you might actually turn into like a popsicle, a literal popsicle. People say, "Oh, I'll turn into a popsicle if I go outside like that." Right? That's a hyperbole. This is literal. They get encased in ice. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure like the Boar King that's in Dragonspine, I think is he or she, I don't remember, gets frozen solid. That thing's massive compared to Eula. And she just chills in the lake of Dragonspine. Now you could say that visions offer resistances towards that. Yeah, resistances, but she's not immune. Especially to this right here might be the harshest environment besides that one island in Inazuma. Let me pull that up because I have the game open right now.
The world remains constant over the centuries, but human life is like the dew at dawn, or a bubble rising through water. Transitory. Emerge, right here.
It's called, oh boy, how am I supposed to pronounce that? Sai Ray Island? Sea Ray Island? I don't know how you pronounce this. Ceirai Island. That's the name of the island. That's the only other place on this whole map that I'd say is close to Dragonspine. That's how like dangerous it is, because you can't even like physically stand on an island for too long, else you'll get electrocuted and like you literally can't stand in the water. You can't. It's all electrified, and it's like this massive storm that's constantly, perpetually over it. Dragonspine is worse than that. So she's able to literally, and pun not intended, chill in the worst environment. Both her and Amber. Does that drive her Amber scaling up? No. She stays where she is. Now, does that put her above Kazuha? No, that blocking of the strike of the Red Shogun is too. I feel like these people are immovable. I'm not moving any of these characters. The only, yeah, I might keep Eula here. So, even though I'm gonna say it again, narratively, they're supposed to replace this guy. In terms of AP, they scale below the Mondstadians. I feel like that's the biggest. Saying that she's able to survive in the harshest environment in the game, like it's nothing. I've, like that actually like drives up her durability. Like I feel like her AP, if these two were to fight, I feel like her AP would be too low to significantly damage Eula, and that's gonna become important when talking about these two going at it. Because that's a future video. Also a future video, these two going at it, 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 these two going at it. Potentially these three going at it. These two going at it definitely. Like I see like a bunch of future video potential while I'm looking at this. So next season of the series, by the way, is gonna come out during the summer. Probably gonna start releasing that stuff. So I'll be working on it as time goes on, but I won't release anything because that's gonna take a lot of time. I'm in school right now, so I'm trying to see if I can drive her like scaling even higher than that, but it's like I really can't. If I were to put a number to the temperature that is in Dragonspine, I mean it has to be below 0 at its peak, right? At the literal mountain's peak. How below 0? It'd probably be like minus 58. That is the type of temperatures that we're dealing with here. However, judging off of like where the water is coming from, like there's warm water coming from up north going into Dragonspine and then going south. But if she's like at the foot, yeah, so that's like kind of helping her out, but that's still Dragonspine that she routinely goes to for fun. So that actually drives up her durability, because most things here literally can't. They have to evolve to survive. If they don't, they could literally freeze to death. They'll get entombed in ice. I think that should do it. Eula, it's gonna switch back to Eula being where she originally was, but she is right behind Kazuha. Alright, I feel good about this. Alright, back to the regular video. Alright, we back. Moving on. You, I placed above him. Was that a fair assessment? She is Cloud Retainer student along with Shinu. Don't get pissed. She might even be older than him. I don't think he's older than him, though. But he's not going below. No, he's not. This is tough. I mean, just because he did one thing that I feel like, well, actually, let's put this into better perspective. Let's put this into better perspective once I remember what I was going to talk about. The amount of power I'm going to mention here is to only serve as a reference on how difficult what Shao did was, not to scale Shao to this character. Honestly, it's not even close. It took everything Arataki Ito had to break through that one boulder in that pocket dimension in the chasm. That's because the walls were the edges of the dimension and was constantly shifting. The fact that Ito was able to overpower this one boulder means either it was meant for him to do that, or he was so powerful he was able to overpower a small portion of that pocket dimension. Either way, he was unconscious for the rest of the trip after doing this, and he's considered a powerhouse. Now take what I said and multiply that times 1,000, because Shao was able to overpower the entire pocket dimension at that point. Though this was through a tool that Ningguang provided for him, he still did it and was the main power source for said device. Alright, just because he did one thing that is potentially more impressive than anything we've seen these two do, doesn't necessarily mean that he's above them. So far, if Shao were to fight her, he would be outnumbered 2-1 because she has a stand. So she would have to deal with that plus Shinhu. But to be fair, okay, I think this is more fair. Like in my speed video, I managed to find a trend in which I can scale characters to. Most of the time, high-ranking vision users have a left and or right hand man, and most of the time, the right and left hand scales to the head but below it. This means if you had to scale multiple characters that fit either left or right, you would have to scale them all to their corresponding heads. For example, Peizhou to Zhongli is like Keqing and Gangyu is to Ningguang. The same goes for Shao and Zhongli. Since Zhongli scales heavily above Ningguang, then that would mean anyone who Zhongli considers his left or right hand man would scale above anyone that Ningguang considers her left or right hand man. Since Zhongli scales heavily above Ningguang, you could say that Shao scales to Ningguang because of the size difference between Ningguang and Zhongli, and the power scaling to the left and right hand. This is very consistent when you consider that Ningguang and Shao performed the exact same feat of creating that platform that could withstand a lot of attacks. The platform for Shao was used differently than the platform used to hold the cannons. However, the power in both scenarios should be around the same. If Ningguang thinks that she's a good right hand for her, and Zhongli thinks that he's a good right hand for him, I feel like that should put her below him because he is above her. Alright. Intelligence scales to Yamiko's. Strategy scales to Yamiko's. The only thing that I don't think that she scales to is power. But neither do these two, right? I mean these other two. In terms of intelligence and battle strategy, I feel like she's above him. I mean, above her. But not these two. But there is material out there that say that these two are very similar in terms of intelligence and battle strategy, or strategy in general. And that's genius. Excuse me. And that's Genius Invocation. That little cutscene that they had together. That might be me overlooking things, but I feel like it's not. These two are literally smarter than everyone else down here in this tier. Most distinguished in 200 years, literally was the sage of the grand sage of the academia, and gave it up because he felt like it was beneath him. I mean, that speaks wonders for how he scales with the rest of the people. Literally is one of the 3 best right or left hands to this guy. And potentially in terms of like intelligence, skills above the other 2 adepti. Especially with the new humans forms. Boy, I tell you, I was so mad when they showed up. They were generic. Oh boy. Looked like no different person in Liyue. I mean, that's technically the point. But come on, dude. I want to go for those characters in the future. I actually tried to get Cloud Retainer because I thought she'd be very useful. She would revive this guy. It should be meta again, at least on my account. She'd definitely be meta with her. Like, Hu Tao, Farina, Cloud Retainer, Zhang Li. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. But that's not meant to be because I don't have Hu Tao, and I don't have Cloud Retainer. I have Diluc, but I don't have Cloud Retainer. So, oh well. Alright. Her placement above Cloud Retainer. 1. Zhang Li left Liyue Harbor and the rest of Liyue to her rather than Cloud Retainer. He had the option to do that. 2. She supported a structure that had cannons that were fired by her plus two other of her colleagues, right? That are relative, and they all shot the missiles and the lasers at the same time, and they damaged Osiel severely. At one point, he just said, "Screw it, I'm nuking all y'all." Nervalet calmly walked over to the flooding waters, and with one hand pushed back the water to its initial starting point and then sealed it. The barrier was very similar to the one that Ningguang and Xiao used in their cutscene, but the difference between this and the one that they used is that this was meant to seal something away instead of propping something up or holding something in place. By the way, Ningguang's barrier was designed to withstand the cannons used in the fight against Osiel. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Whatever damage the turrets were able to do to Osiel, the barrier should be able to withstand itself, because it withstood the recoil. The turrets were capable of staggering Osiel and making him go all out. However, this took everything Ningguang had, because her job in that situation was literally to keep the barrier up, and she was meditating and focusing on just the barrier. The barrier in this case is more durable and more powerful than anything Ningguang was capable of doing normally, especially when she was resonating with other geoconstructs, including the Jade Chamber. The Jade Chamber seems to have a massive amount of latent energy within it, so you could say that the explosion that we saw in the end was actually less than what it normally would be if she just dropped it instead of trying to fight Osiel. If he shot a different attack, I feel like... I feel like the outcome wouldn't have changed if he just shot a straight laser at them. But regardless, Ningguang, in terms of power, held up something that was fired by her, plus two other of her colleagues that should scale. And then later when his wife came around, though she wasn't anywhere as strong, she did rival the turrets that were originally powered by the Adapti. And if the narrative is true about them not needing Zhongli anymore, the turrets would scale to the amount of power that the turrets outputted when Cloud Retainer and the rest of her colleagues were on the turrets. So that means that the turrets in both scenarios were relative in terms of power. In fact, you can argue that Ningguang did way more damage than any of the turrets ever did, except for that nuke that the laser shot, which I feel like she actually can do, because of what I said before, she was supported the laser that was fired on the platform. So that solidly puts her above everyone else here, plus knowing an ability that is used by him and him. People who have been around for little thousands to hundreds of thousands of years. So she stays right where she is. Zhongli felt like he would be too much of a handful for Ningguang if he starts stirring up trouble. So he said, I'll personally deal with this. Put in what I talked about specifically here. After going through the dialogue of Zhongli's interactions with Child, though he feels like he can deal with him comfortably, he admits that he may pose a massive problem in the future. This may be me looking too far into things, but considering the few times he's actually gotten involved with an issue, they were usually outrageous and abnormal situations that would require his aid in order to survive or get the job done. Asia is a good example of this, along with the events of the Chasm with Arataki Ito, Kuki, Yolan, and Yanfei. If he felt like he'd need to get directly involved with Chao, that means that from the events of Leeway in 1.0, he was already either this strong or approaching this level of power. So as of right now, I can say that he and the Traveler are equals because of his scaling. After Nervalet and the Travel encountered the all-devouring whale, they said that it came from the stars. We don't know if they mean literal stars. There are many things pointing to the fact that it might be, considering the Traveler themselves isn't from Dabat and is from another world. So if they say that it can devour everything into that, you could say that the whale is high continental or planetary. Nervalet casually one-shot Chao as he was transforming in the Foul Legacy form. You could say that Nervalet is stronger than Foul Legacy Chao without his vision and only his delusion, stronger than Foul Legacy with the vision, or stronger than just his delusion with or without the vision, and not Foul Legacy, because he didn't fully transform. Either way, Child eventually became too tired to fight the whale, and had been fighting it for several days on end, meaning Child should scale to the whale at some point before we see him again, but the whale has gotten so strong that he can no longer fend it off. This line of thinking is probably what Nervalet was referring to when he said that they had no chance of beating it. Alright, we back? Good. Alright. Was once an Archon, and was initially supposed to be like a test subject or a test run for this. I want to bring up something that I noticed about A and the Shogun. First, neither of them have lungs. A is just pure energy now because of what she did to herself, and the Shogun is just a puppet, just like the Wanderer, meaning they don't have normal human stamina. Moving on, I want to show that this is an actual concept within the game, that there is a such thing as an inexhaustible supply of anything in Genshin Impact. There is an urn that appears during the Zhongli character quest that no matter what, it will always be halfway full of salt. Unless the urn is broken, it will endlessly keep producing salt to make it halfway. Let's apply this to A, the Shogun, and the Wanderer. Unless something happens to multiply their power, or something happens to where they can't use their power, no matter what, they'll always be able to output a set amount at a time. This is why they are able to fight for so long without taking any breaks. We can also apply this to the Wanderer when he had the Electro-Gnosis. Because A thinks that the Gnosis is useless to her to the point of giving it to Yamiko, we can assume that A should scale to or above the Gnosis, seeing that she is now able to emulate its power on her own. The Wanderer used the Electro-Gnosis in the mech because of his mechanical features, and is also fighting in something mechanical like him. He is under the exact same or even better physical conditions than the Raiden Shogun for him to fight forever if he needed to, because he's fighting something that's doing the work for him. We can scale the power of the Gnosis directly to A 500 years ago when she split the island in half, but not to A when she first met the Traveler. The island splitting feat was around after the point she got rid of the Gnosis. Both A and the Shogun trained for 500 years after that, meaning that they are now stronger than they were back then. It even says in her burst description that the sword technique that she uses is a new technique that was recently developed. Finally, the Wanderer, when he was in his mech form, when he was trying to be an Archon, he shoots a laser. It is confirmed to be a laser. And the Wanderer created the mech to become a deity. Since the Wanderer knows all about that, he would have the mech built to meet the basic standards. This is extremely important because in one of the quests where the Wanderer went back in time and fought himself, the fake Wanderer launched a laser beam at the Traveler. The Wanderer saw it in slow motion, got a "I need to protect my friends" amp, and then blitzed both the Traveler and the laser at the same time and stopped it. And he literally did like a JoJo pose afterwards. So either he was trying to look cool or that was a casual light speed feat. So let's apply these feats to cutscenes and in-game lore. There have been 2 occasions where an ally fighting alongside the Traveler had to stop a blitz attempt that was going to seriously damage the Traveler. That is when he was fighting the Wanderer when he was an Archon, and when the Raiden Shogun made a blitz attempt at him after he left the palace where the Raiden Shogun lives. If you apply this situation looks like that situation, so these two might be similar. Both the laser and the Raiden Shogun were moving at the speed of light. But the thing is, we know exactly how fast the Raiden Shogun and A are, and we know that A was holding back when she was making that blitz attempt. We don't know if the mech the Wanderer was fighting in was holding back. And in my initial recording for this, I said that A and the Raiden Shogun do not scale to the Traveler at all because they scale far above them. Gnosis grant users the ability to do things like create the money that is used across the entire continent, create and dispel storms across the globe, access knowledge across the globe from a tree, delete things that are not needed like a computer. By the way, logically this would mean that you'd be able to delete someone from history and the world. The Wanderer nearly did that to himself when he was given access to the tree with the amount of power he had left from the Electro-Gnosis. The difference is he didn't delete himself, he just deleted his history and his ties to the Fatui. Right. Problem is, he doesn't have any special abilities like this character in Down, really. In fact, he kind of reminds me, I'm not going to say it, but he can fly. I mean, he can fly. I'll give him that. He can fly. So can you. So can you. Potentially you. So can you. Maybe. And that's as far as I'll go. I'm not gonna stroll down. Might be more. Actually, she can fly too. She did. So, like a bunch of characters can fly. He's not too special. But I will say, That's probably where he got it from. He is older than Tartag, remember? It was created in the early days, literally before the Shogun. So, and he still has residual power from the Gnosis, but we don't know what else he can do. He is able to manipulate the Erming Soul. That's what he's able to do. So he could literally delete people from the, once he has access to the tree. He can't just do it from wherever. Neither can Nahida. That actually brings up something important that I might bring up about a specific gate that was accessed. I'm gonna put in the picture of the statement that I got, and then we're gonna move on.
It's rare to hear such comforting words from you. I graciously accept them.
Oh, come on. You only think it's rare because you never used to listen to a word I say.
Makoto said the exact same thing!
Great minds think alike, hmm? I wonder, does that qualify me to, maybe, take the position of Shogun for a couple of days? Actually, no. Forget that. Far more trouble than it's worth.
Alright, we're back? Good. I should have also thrown in a little something extra. Alright, we're finally up here. We're gonna work our way up to here, these two. Alright. You two. If Rina were to punch this girl in the face, I feel like she would knock her out in one hit. The problem with that is she would have to get there. If Nahida puts her into a loop, what'll happen is, well, can she do that without her gnosis? I mean, I don't think it'll be infinite, but I feel like she could still do it. And also, she can read minds. She doesn't need the gnosis to do that. She can communicate to people in their mind. What is exactly stopping her from putting in a loop that only affects the mind and makes them think that they're doing something, and they're doing it over and over for a set amount of times rather than infinite, right? Imagine if she did that. Does that sound like anything in particular? Izanami from Naruto. There is too much evidence there that says that she can do something like that. Remember, it's not outlandish for me to make these statements, considering that visions are very similar to a lantern ring in terms of functionality. Like, you can literally make anything and do whatever you want, even hard to light constructs, right? And it can be like one-to-one with the originals. So, and that's another reason why she's above her. She can literally make anything because she has enough knowledge and wisdom to do so. I mean, Freena's no slouch when it comes to intelligence. You know what I'm talking about the lore, right? Let's judge the actual Farina, the actual false lore that got cooked in the end. Spoilers. In terms of AP, she would scale to him. I'll talk about him later. But she stays right where she is. She stays right there. Why? Because of what I just said about the Izanagi. I mean, what's stopping... Not Izanagi. Wait. Can't she do that? It's a literal loop. She does... Wait. She could do that. And as we see from, like, one of the characters, each time, it's not like is restarting from like the day on, like the beginning of the day, like the actual timeline. It's the next day, but it's being treated like it's being restarted. So as like the loops keep going on, the endurance goes down, down, down for the person. We saw this for one of the characters in the main storyline. I think Dea was trying to protect her or keep her safe or something. I think she had Elzar too. I don't know her name. Started with a D. What was I talking about? Right. That's what I was talking about. So, yeah, their endurance goes down each time the loop is replayed. So she literally could actually just loop her until her stamina goes out, even without the Gnosis. Because she might be able to still do it, but not as many times. Yeah, I feel like that's a fair assessment. But anyways, what I'm getting at here is, even if she's full floor scales to Venti, if Nahida puts her into that same type of Izanami loop for a certain amount of times, and then walks up to her while that loop is being replayed, and it's like,
let me see what you have. No!
like, what exactly is Fulsar gonna do when she can't move? Because her brain's like going in her head thinking that she is moving. Right? So, also her sealing abilities might be cracked. We didn't get to see it with the doctor, mostly because she was fatigued. So, anyways, moving on. Him. Every time this guy says he's the weakest Archon, he is capping. He is. And let me explain why. First off, mathematically, if he got weaker, he would not have been able to stop Dvalin. Because I determined that Dvalin actually was island level. Has like either like above island level or very similar to that. And I did that in the math. I'm going to place that math right here. Let me get my phone because I took screenshots of what I'm talking about. Give me a minute. Here we go. So, what was it? Sorry, this is taking a while. Alright, so I calced in a single blast, like let's just say that, well, let me just play what I'm talking about right here. Now let's go back to Mondstadt during the Dvalin fight. I counted 9 structures that were being held up by the wind. These structures were made of stone and were about the size of a building. Category 5 hurricanes are known for flattening buildings, not lifting them so high in the air they go into the stratosphere and are just floating around. These winds could possibly be moving over 2,000 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, the planet Neptune has winds that exceed 1,500 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. In the Google image that you should be seeing on screen right now, you should be seeing where it says that a fully developed hurricane can output about 10 megatons every 20 minutes. It did not specify what kind of hurricane that was. So you could say that a Category 1 hurricane could output this amount of energy. Or you could say a Category 5 could output this amount of energy. It's not specific. The winds of hurricanes are known to be 250 miles per hour, not even close to what's on Neptune. On screen, you should be seeing pictures of what it looks like for a Category 5 hurricane to pass over an area. And hopefully I'm able to find one of a specific area where the houses are actually built to withstand this. Even though Osael was strong, he didn't produce these kinds of winds. Also, Dvalin was weakened because of that zit on the back of his head, slowly poisoning him and killing him. It was making him go mad, so he was basically throwing his strength around at the same time, tiring him more. So technically this is the bare minimum we can get for Dvalin's power in terms of scaling, because he's nerfed and he should be exhausted at this point. Yet he's still able to passively create 1,000 mile per hour winds, meaning we can scale Dvalin above Osael. Dvalin is the right hand of the animal Arca, which means we should be able to scale him to Ajaha and vice versa. So what we just said for Dvalin, we can apply this to Ajaha. To remove the zit on the back of Dvalin's head, the Traveler would have to physically fight and knock out Dvalin, alongside everyone else there. During the boss battle, it is implied that Diluc, Venti, the Traveler, and Jean are capable of temporarily knocking out Dvalin. So the Traveler would scale at most to 1/4 of the power that this weakened Dvalin had at that time, considering there were 3 other people besides the Traveler. So why are we talking about tornadoes and calamities? During the Dvalin fight, the Traveler would have to be able to fight against the 1,000 mile per hour winds and fight Dvalin. So his physical strength would scale to that, along with his elemental power at this point of the story. And the proof of this, during the Osael fight, everyone there put all their energy into the Traveler and then into the Jade Chamber and launched it at Osael. The resulting explosion didn't just come from the Jade Chamber, but from everyone else there. Later on, when you get to Inazuma, it is stated that the Raiden Shogun is able to control storms across all 4 corners of the earth. At the beginning of the story, there was a massive self-sustaining storm that capsized most ships and made it nearly impossible for anyone to leave. Alright, we're back. I have a number in terms of megatons. If he were to shoot off a normal blast with the calc that I have for him, that would be 270 megatons. 1/4 of that, according to ChatGPT, is capable of leveling an island. The Tsar bomb, according to ChatGPT, is 50 megatons, not 270. And 1/4 of that is 65.7. One-fourth, and 1.14, and 1/4. Now remember, Dvalin was weakened when he did this, meaning the number only goes up from here. He was poisoned, remember, by Durin's blood, and that weakened him over time. So that's what happened. Yeah, I'm gonna place what I was talking about in the video and all the things that I asked ChatGPT right here. Alright, we back? Good. So this guy is island level. I proved it with the math, and I can prove it with this feat. The Golden Arc Archipelago. Alright, we back? Good. What Venti did is beyond what we saw from the map of the Golden Arc Archipelago. It's the iceberg effect. There is landmass in between the islands, but it's below the surface of the ocean. And Venti will have to move that as well. Massive. Now, because of the island's weird properties, the Gnosis was probably used, but I'm going to play in this clip what I said about Gnosis. Right here. In this scene, we learn how much control over the elements the Archons have. We learned that they have the basic ability of calling forth their element, certain sealing techniques, and to somewhat manipulate certain aspects that the element represents. This does include things like time, electro, judgment, hydro, order, geo, freedom, animal, and knowledge, dendro. Pay attention to her wording. She called Celestia and the rules that they put in place an establishment, or a governmental body. If you know anything about people's views towards their government, you know that they try to reject the government and try to prepare for when the government tries to take their rights away. That's exactly what happened to the original Hydro Archon. That's why this plan had to be put in place, a direct stance against Celestia. The same thing going on here would explain why A and Zhongli felt indifferent about giving their Gnosis away. This also explains why Venti was indifferent when it came to losing his Gnosis. He wanted to get rid of it, but he was afraid of getting Celestia's attention, so he quote-unquote lost it to Senora and let the Tsarista take the blame and not him. Before we continue on, I want to make note of something. This script was made before 4.2, and we now know some new information now that we finished the Archon quest. We now know that the Gnosis were made from the remains of the third Descender. If I remember correctly, the third Descender is the Traveler's sister. Sup guys, Drago2020 here, and I made a couple mistakes. I'm just going to tell you that right now, and I'm going to go over what I got wrong afterwards. So, this only applies to this section, what I'm saying right here. So, let's continue. Because he's the fourth. So this tells us a couple things. One, you don't need a Gnosis to become an Archon. We know for a fact that Makoto was an Archon well before the Calamity, and that was over 500 years ago. And the Calamity was 500 years ago. We know that the Traveler you're playing with now notes that he's been asleep for 500 years, and 500 years ago was the Calamity. And, if I'm assuming things correctly, 500 years ago, the other sibling woke up and started traveling through Tavac. 2. Neverland doesn't need a Gnosis to have complete control over Hydro. He just needed the authority transferred from Focalor. 3. Once the Gnosis is taken away, the only thing that is taken away are the extra abilities that Celestia awarded. What this tells me is that the Traveler most likely has the power of a Gnosis within him, and he doesn't know it. We can also get from this that one of the rules that Celestia has over the land is that you can only control one element. So what I can assume is that the other sibling made their journey across Tavad the same way that the one that you're playing as did, in that they made it to Snatch Zaya and obtained all 7 elements. Then Celestia showed up, captured them, took pieces of the twin, and made Gnosis out of what was powering them. There's nothing that says that the other Traveler and the one that you're playing as right now is any different from the other, which means they might be equals when gaining corresponding elements during their journey. With this knowledge, we can say for a fact that Gnosis scales to Archons and the Traveler scales to Gnosis, because the Traveler scales to Archons, and the power difference between Gnosis and Archons are negligible to 0. The only difference is Gnosis have other abilities awarded to it by Celestia. That's it. Alright, so here's what I got wrong. So the other traveler, they are not the third descender. It is specifically stated for some reason that they are not the third descender. That doesn't make sense to me at all. But it's what they say. It's a part of the lore. So that stuff where I said that the traveler scales to Gnosis and to Archons, but that is still true though. That is still true because he fought against both. He beat both. Even though the Archon he fought was out of his league and he needed help, he still did it, right? He still did it. Yaimiko put him in charge of doing it rather than doing it herself. And if you've seen my previous video, you should know the lore behind her in terms of power scaling, right? In short, the only thing I got wrong is that Lumine or Aether, whatever other traveler that you didn't choose, that person is not a descender. Everything else, including him having the power of Gnosis within him and not knowing it, that is still true. So just replace what I said about the traveler sister with the third descender and we should be fine. So that's pretty much the only thing I got wrong. I thought I got a whole lot more wrong. That stuff about Celestia coming in and snatching up the other twin, you can say that actually happened because that sounds like them. So back to regular video. So, without me knowing this information, I was able to prove that the Traveler scales to Archons. So whatever Archons are able to do in terms of attack, potency, and destructive power, he may be able to do, especially when you consider that their kits are meant to complement or mirror Archons of each region. So, you back? Good. He stays where he is, even if he didn't scale to Gnosis. Do I need to say anything about this guy being above Venti and the rest of these? I feel like I should just move on. Moving on. Depending on which traveler you chose, I'll just put them both here. I want to make a statement on a general progression of the story and how the traveler is portrayed as it goes on. First, at the beginning of the story, he fights this unknown deity and he gets sealed away for 500 years. Then it is stated that he has to go around Tevat looking for his sister or her brother, depending on who you pick, and at the same time having to reclaim most of the strength that was lost due to time. And gaining the elements would help with that. So the first thing he gets is Animo, right? And the first thing he fights is the right hand of one of the deities in Tevat, which is the Valen. He doesn't beat him, but he does fight him to the point where he's able to remove that pimple that is on the back of his head that's corrupting him. Then we go into Leeway, where that whole story is that Leeway can exist without a deity, and they prove this by defeating something that a deity would be required in order to defeat. Then we go to the Inazuman arc, where the traveler has to fight a deity. He doesn't beat the deity, but he's able to fight the deity. Then we go over to Sumeru, where the Wanderer wanted to become a deity or an Archon, and he constructed a mech to meet the base requirements so he can become an Archon, and he had a Gnosis. At that point of the story, you could call him an Archon. He definitely called himself an Archon, and he defeated him. Though it was with the help of Nahida, he still did it. Nahida provided no, aside from her showing him how the Wanderer fights. After that, the Traveler did all of the heavy lifting afterwards, aside from Shrine of Maya stuff, of course. Now we're here in Fontaine, and the Traveler is directly confronting an Archon again. They are seen as equals, based off the dialogue. What I'm getting at here is that even if you don't believe that he's getting faster, he is getting stronger. The story is working the Traveler up to fight that lady in the beginning, or that deity, so to speak, so that when he eventually finds his sister, he can fight that person. The only thing we can do is speculate, because there hasn't been any statements explaining the Traveler's speed. So I don't think it's accurate to say that the Traveler doesn't get faster. The Wanderer, when he was in his mech form, when he was trying to be an Archon, he shoots a laser. It is confirmed to be a laser. And the Wanderer created the mech to become a deity. Since the Wanderer knows all about that, he would have the mech built to meet the basic standards. This is extremely important because in one of the quests where the Wanderer went back in time and fought himself, the fake Wanderer launched a laser beam at the Traveler. The Wanderer saw it in slow motion, got a "I need to protect my friends" amp, and then blitzed both the Traveler and the laser at the same time and stopped it. And he literally did like a JoJo pose afterwards. So either he was trying to look cool or that was a casual lightspeed feat. Lightning to the Traveler travels in slow motion.
Alright, so this is take 3. I finally found a clip to adequately describe what I was talking about. Right now you should be seeing lightning strike the ground. It should take around 3 seconds to hit the ground. Keep this in mind for what I'm about to say in a minute.
So I gave him a 5 to 10 times increase from the speed of lightning. The speed of lightning is 1/3 the speed of light. So 5 times 1/3, that is 1 2/3. So he's 2/3 faster than the speed of light. And if I'm using the 10 times multiplier, he is 3 1/3 faster than the speed of light. Now this got overshadowed by Tignari and Dea. When they dodged lightning, that came from the Wanderer. Now this lightning was amped because it came from someone who was wielding a Gnosis, which is much stronger than a Vision. So this lightning was totally amped. And Tignari is nowhere near the Wanderer, even without him having Gnosis, because the Wanderer scales to the Traveler, at least at the time of him having Dendro. So I increased this to 15 to 20 times the speed of lightning. And for the Traveler, we have 5 times speed of light and 6 to the 2/3 the speed of light. Alright, before we get started, I was struggling to find these light speed feats, so I decided to look at the enemies and the type of attack they launch at the Traveler, and I managed to not only find a bunch of light speed attacks, but I also found a trend. And most of the light speed attacks in game come from something that is A, supposed to protect something on the divine level, B, something on the divine level, or C, something alien that's not of this world. But first, I need to talk about a statement that Ningguang made during the Osio fight. She described the event of his release on the level of a cataclysm. A cataclysm is a large-scale and violent event in the natural world. We're only paying attention to that first one. Some synonyms that I found for cataclysm was calamity and apocalypse. And in both calamity and apocalypse, natural disasters and earthquakes are prime examples of this. We also have things as a nuclear holocaust, zombie apocalypse, alien invasion, and so on and so forth. Alright, so let's check some of the things off the list. Osio was passively generating tornadoes / waterspouts, a massive hurricane, and he also is capable of creating massive waves. We know this because his wife did it and she is weaker than him. On Google, it states that a hurricane can output the energy of a 10 megaton nuclear bomb every 20 minutes. There are multiple bosses in the game that can make minions that can fight for them. 2 examples that I can think of is Oceanid and the Hydro Cube. Both bosses are made of Hydro, and Osio is made of Hydro, so it makes sense that he would be able to do this. For these Hydro creatures to be able to roam around and fight, they have to be near a water source. If Osio wanted them to fight for him, he would have to carve out the land letting seawater inlet wherever he wanted them to go, or blast holes throughout the country and let the seawater fill them. He has the power to do it, he has the incentive to do it, and when you consider that he's under the same effects of erosion just like Aishtaha, he was in the right mindset to do it. There's no reason why he wouldn't do this. In fact, he has an extra incentive to do it because Zhongli is the Geo Archon and the Geo Archon sealed him away. So he would want to destroy everything that has to do with Geo, including the landmass. So what Ningguang said was not a hyperbole. Osio was going to physically destroy Liyue. Now let's go back to Mondstadt during the Dvalin fight. I counted 9 structures that were being held up by the wind. These structures were made of stone and were about the size of a building. Category 5 hurricanes are known for flattening buildings, not lifting them so high in the air they go into the stratosphere and are just floating around. These winds could possibly be moving over 2,000 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, the planet Neptune has winds that exceed 1,500 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound. In the Google image that you should be seeing on screen right now, you should be seeing where it says that a fully developed hurricane can output about 10 megatons every 20 minutes. It did not specify what kind of hurricane that was. So you could say that a Category 1 hurricane could output this amount of energy. Or you could say a Category 5 could output this amount of energy. It's not specific. The winds of hurricanes are known to be 250 miles per hour, not even close to what's on Neptune. On screen, even though Osael was strong, he didn't produce these kinds of winds. Also, Dvalin was weakened because of that zit on the back of his head, slowly poisoning him and killing him. It was making him go mad, so he was basically throwing his strength around at the same time, tiring him more. So technically, this is the bare minimum we can get for Dvalin's power in terms of scaling, because he's nerfed and he should be exhausted at this point. Yet he's still able to passively create 1,000 mile per hour winds, meaning we can scale Dvalin above Osael. Dvalin is the right hand of the animal Arca, which means we should be able to scale him to Ajaha and vice versa. So what we just said for Dvalin, we can apply this to Ajaha. To remove the zit on the back of Dvalin's head, the Traveler would have to physically fight and knock out Dvalin, alongside everyone else there. During the boss battle, it is implied that Diluc, Venti, the Traveler, and Jean are capable of temporarily knocking out Dvalin. So the Traveler would scale at most to 1/4 of the power that this weakened Dvalin had at that time, considering there were 3 other people besides the Traveler. So why are we talking about tornadoes and calamities? During the Dvalin fight, the Traveler would have to be able to fight against the 1,000 mile per hour winds and fight Dvalin. So his physical strength would scale to that, along with his elemental power at this point of the story. And the proof of this, during the Osael fight, everyone there put all their energy into the Traveler and then into the Jade Chamber and launched it at Osael. The resulting explosion didn't just come from the Jade Chamber, but from everyone else there. I'm gonna say everything, well actually, I'm gonna put everything that I said about Nervalat right here. In the primordial water situation, and Farina didn't divulge any details and tried her best to deflect the question, instead of going down there and taking care of the flood herself. Instead, she sent Nervalat to do it, and in that moment we saw how strong he was compared to Farina. Nervalat calmly walked over to the flooding waters, and with one hand pushed back the water to its initial starting point and then sealed it. The barrier was very similar to the one that Ningguang and Xiao used in their cutscene, but the difference between this and the one that they used is that this was meant to seal something away instead of propping something up or holding something in place. Let's go back to Nervalat for a second. When he stopped the primordial sea with one hand, we didn't know exactly how big the sea was. I theorized that it was bigger than the Red Sea. It ended up being much more water than that. During the cutscene, when the water level was at its highest, you could not see the highest mountains, meaning that the maximum volume was taller than the tallest mountain in Fontaine, meaning we can calculate how much water was there by measuring the tallest mountain to the ground, and then measuring what we see from Fontaine right now as of version 1.2. But not this video, only in a specific video for Nervalat. After Nervalat and the Traveler encountered the all-devouring whale, they said that it came from the stars. We don't know if they mean literal stars. There are many things pointing to the fact that it might be, considering the Traveler themselves isn't from Devat and is from another world. So if they say that it can devour everything into that, you could say that the whale is high continental or planetary. The bigger it grows, the more it will be able to take in, depending on whether this is continental scaling or planetary scaling. Nervalat should in fact scale to this. Let me explain. When they first encountered the whale, Neverlet said that they had no chance at beating it. The second he got the authority of Hydro transferred to him, he felt confident in taking on the whale. Now this could mean a couple things. One, this could mean that he figured that he and the Traveler without the authority of Hydro weren't able to beat it. Two, he felt his own power was inferior and not the Traveler's, but knew that the Traveler needed help in order to win. Or three, he thought eventually the whale was going to get too strong to fight if they could fight him then. Neverlet casually one-shot Child as he was transforming in the Foul Legacy form. You could say that Neverlet is stronger than Foul Legacy Child without his vision and only his delusion, stronger than Foul Legacy with the vision, or stronger than just his delusion with or without the vision, and not Foul Legacy, because he didn't fully transform. Either way, Child eventually became too tired to fight the whale, and had been fighting it for several days on end, meaning Child should scale to the whale at some point before we see him again, but the whale has gotten so strong that he can no longer fend it off. This line of thinking is probably what Neverlet was referring to when he said that they had no chance of beating it. A quick line of scaling for Tartag and Neverlet. Child without his delusion seemed to not bother Neverlet, but as he began to charge into Foul Legacy, Neverlet felt like he had to intervene himself. He probably felt that once transformed, Child would be too much of a problem to handle or would endanger Farina. This is without his vision. So as of 4.2, he is stronger than he was when we first fought him in Leeway. Because of this scaling, we can say full power Child is Archon level and scales closer to A in Zhongli than he did before. What this scaling means for Neverlet is that he could one-shot an off-guard Traveler if he needed to, meaning he does directly scale to the power of a Gnosis without applying the lore of how Gnosis were created. The Traveler fought the Raiden Shogun and the Wanderer with an Electro Gnosis. Though these were done at different power levels, this is still the highest tier of power in Genshin. To finish off, this means Neverlet could indeed fight with the Raiden Shogun and possibly win. This is before we saw what he does at the end of the version. With authority given to him, I do think that it's possible he can actually defeat the Raiden Shogun, even with the time skip. At least I feel confident in him beating the base Shogun. Whether he can beat base A is a different question. She does have the transformation and the sword, just like the Shogun. The difference is A is more powerful than the Shogun. Just because A got more powerful doesn't necessarily mean the Shogun itself got more powerful. It might become more powerful because A is in control of it, but when she's not, there's nothing that assumes that the Raiden Shogun without A's control is as strong as A. So for now, we will say that the Raiden Shogun is weaker than A and is at its strongest when A is in full control of it. And when A is in full control of the Shogun, I don't know if Neverlet would be able to win. Remember, A with the sword does scale to that large Shadow Lord form that we saw during the Raiden Shogun's boss battle and the regular version of it. Back on topic, the whale required 3 Archon level characters to defeat it: Child, the Traveler, and Neverlet, meaning this thing is able to fight multiple Archons by itself. After holding it back for a while, a woman named Skirk shows up and claims that that thing is her pet. How she describes it as her pet is just downright disrespectful. She says that the only thing that it's got going for it is looks, otherwise it, quote, fails as a pet. This means that she herself is far above the whale itself, and she has a person above her who she calls her master. The more the story progresses, the closer and closer we get to characters that are able to destroy most of the vat, because if they scale this high above the whale, imagine how high they scale above everyone else. Now, we back? Good. Whatever twin you chose scales to this guy. They are relative. They go up from here once they get to Netlim. So remember, they get slightly stronger each time they get an element. And then they have to master it. Here we go. Later on, when you get to Inazuma, It is stated that the Raiden Shogun is able to control storms across all four corners of the earth. At the beginning of the story, there was a massive self-sustaining storm that capsized most ships and made it nearly impossible for anyone to leave. On top of this, there was a specific island to where if anyone got near specific trees, they would be struck by lightning. If you remember, it was like a puzzle and you had to guide the lightning to specific spots for it to strike and complete the puzzle. On a side note, this means that her controlling storms across all four corners of the globe is directly from her and not the Gnosis. Because at the time of the storms, A did not have the Gnosis, neither did the Shogun. It was in Yaimiko's care at this point. She can also program the storms to act independently and strike certain things, meaning that she doesn't have to directly control it all the time. Both storms are able to be passively generated by the Shogun and A, and the Traveler fought against both. I want to bring up something that I noticed about A and the Shogun. First, neither of them have lungs. A is just pure energy now because of what she did to herself, and the Shogun is just a puppet, just like the Wanderer, meaning they don't have normal human stamina. Second, neither the Shogun or A use their Gnosis. That's because in their eyes, they no longer need it. Also, A couldn't turn the Gnosis into a power supply for the Shogun. I don't know why she didn't think to just store it in there rather than give it to Yaimiko, but I digress. And finally, both A and the Shogun can fight for 200 years straight without any rest, sleep, or food. These are the traits of someone who has infinite energy. Now, what kind of infinite energy are we talking about here? Let me put it in the simple terms. The Shogun and A are very similar to Android 18 and 17. They both have inexhaustible energy supplies, and they never seem to fatigue. Now, when you Google search infinite, it says limitless under it, and the Shogun definitely has limits. Like 17 and 18, they can't normally output more energy than their max, like a sustained blast like a laser. However, they can charge up attacks more powerful than their maximum. For example, a giant ball of energy or a single slash. But the rate they charge it up will be the maximum output. And to drive it home, what do we see the Wanderer and the Shogun do in their boss battles? They charge up an attack more powerful than their max output. Now, some people might say that anyone can do this, and they don't need to have the description of infinite energy. And you would be correct, but not to this extent. They wouldn't be able to do it. A normal person, if they attempted to unleash an attack like this, they will end up using up all their energy, versus the Shogun, she still had way more energy to continue fighting. And to those who say that during the boss battle, the Shogun clearly gets exhausted at a certain point after the initial slash, my rebuttal against that is that this attack was different from any other attack that was launched during the 500-year period. We don't know if that form has any drawbacks, very similar to what happens to Shao whenever he puts on the mask. Yes, this is just one slash, but this slash seems to slash apart the dimension you're in, and she's doing it from a separate dimension so that she couldn't be attacked during the process of her charging it up. Let's also talk about the fact that this attack involves increasing the size of the Shadow Lord form, which is the form that the Shogun takes during the boss fight. So much so that the sword is unable to miss its target because it's as big as the entire dimension. Again, we don't know if the Shadow Lord form has any drawbacks, but based off of the fact that at no point does the Shogun ever show exhaustion until after she assumes the form, we can say that it does have a drawback. And moving on, I want to show that this is an actual concept within the game, that there is a such thing as an inexhaustible supply of anything in Genshin Impact. There is an urn that appears during the Zhongli character quest that no matter what, it will always be halfway full of salt. Unless the urn is broken, it will endlessly keep producing salt to make it halfway. Let's apply this to A, the Shogun, and the Wanderer. Unless something happens to multiply their power, or something happens to where they can't use their power, no matter what, they'll always be able to output a set amount at a time. This is why they are able to fight for so long without taking any breaks. They were equals in physicality, equal in power, and they didn't have any stamina issues to worry about, so they could just keep fighting if they wanted to. We can also apply this to the Wanderer when he had the Electro-Gnosis. Because A thinks that the Gnosis is useless to her to the point of giving it to Yamiko, we can assume that A should scale to or above the Gnosis, seeing that she is now able to emulate its power on her own. We can scale the power of the Gnosis directly to A 500 years ago when she split the island in half, but not to A when she first met the Traveler. The island splitting feat was around after the point she got rid of the Gnosis. Both A and the Shogun trained for 500 years after that, meaning that they are now stronger than they were back then. It even says in her burst description that the sword technique that she uses is a new technique that was recently developed. Also in the cutscene where it shows her fighting the snake demon, she was in her base form, not her Shadow Lord form, meaning that the Gnosis scales to and below base A. A Gnosis is not required to enter the Shadow Lord form because the Shogun used it against A, and the Gnosis had been given away at this point. It has been stated that the Shogun can do everything that A can, and vice versa. That means that A has access to both the Shadow Lord form and Makoto's sword, each potentially giving her a 5 to 10 times buff. I will discuss which I think is stronger in my opinion, but this will be in a different video. Now let's talk about Archons and them gaining the authority of an element. This seems to be a serious increase. Neverland did not even want to try to fight the Narwhal without this. I have a theory about A and Makoto's sword and when she went to go fight the Shogun in Makoto's dimension. My theory is that Makoto didn't transfer the authority of Electro to her when she passed. Instead, she potentially transferred it to her when she started resonating with the sword and let go of her past traumas, which means she was as strong as a Gnosis before she got authority of Electro, and now she's much stronger than that, to the point where it's just abysmal. So saying that she's high island level is not accurate as of me recording this. She's now reaching into continental ranges, and that's without the Shadow Lord form, something that all other Archons are capable of doing without a Gnosis. All Archons are capable of sealing away people and entities with their own methods. For example, Zhongli seems to bury them in the ground and then seal them like he did to Aishaha. And A, she has her own method of sealing people. She can create a pocket dimension, place them inside of it, and then just seal it shut to where nobody can get in or out, except for her. Time seems to pass differently while inside these dimensions, meaning if she traps a normal person, all it'll take is a couple minutes for them to succumb to exhaustion. By the way, I have a guesstimate on how big the plane of Euthymia is and Makoto's dimension, and it's as I suspected. It's infinite, and it's the kind that's ever expanding and the endpoint just keeps going on forever. Please do not assume that this applies to her speed or power, only her range. The Shadow Lord form seems to draw a lot of energy to the point where even the Shogun, who is not even a living person, and more like an android with limitless stamina, is weakened for a period after activating it. This is probably why Zhongli didn't use it against Asia. In terms of AP, this guy hits way harder than the Raiden Shogun. At least, I assume so. No, he doesn't. Alright, so that feat of holding back the Primordial Seed before he got the authority of Hydro, that was impressive. But realize that the Raiden Shogun in that 500-year time skip got hundreds of times stronger. Hundreds of times from where she was. Realize that with the sword out, she got a whole blitz tier faster and a potentially one-shot tier stronger. At least a 10 times amp with that. With just the sword out before the time skip. That's because she didn't fully awaken it. So once during the time skip, like once we get back and we see her fight the Shadow Lord form, it makes sense that with the sword she's able to fight the Shadow Lord form. because that could potentially be a 10 times amp. I mean, the Shadow Lord form itself should be 10 times bigger than A, right? Makes sense. So if you're using size to power scale, realize that this thing is capable of becoming only you can prevent forest fires big and slash apart a potentially infinite dimension. For the sake of Narvalat, we're going to say it's 100 times bigger, because what I'm about to say next, the next two things I'm going to say. Number one, A and the Shogun are two different people, so they have two different power sources. So whatever we said for base A applies to base Shogun. And if you increase the base, because if A is possession of the Shogun, she has access to its power source, right? So if you increase the base, you drive up the number that the multipliers give. 2 times island level, plus a 10 times, plus a 100 times with the Shadow Lord form, and then the beefy Shadow Lord form. Now realize that with the Shadow Lord form, the Shogun created a sword that looked like the Muso no Hitotachi. In functionality, it was supposed to like work like it. So you could say that the Shadow Lord form technically is a 20 times amp, like the base version of it. But it doesn't actually have Makoto's will in it, which is what buffed A. So that means with the actual Muso no Hitotachi, A is getting a... With the Shadow Lord form and the Muso no Hitotachi, A is getting a 200% amp on top of a 10%. No, a 200% amp on top of a 20%. Because of the base Shadow Lord form, like simply activating it is 10 times. Pulling the sword is a 10 times, at least at base. And then at full power, the sword is like 100 times. Is able to scale to that Shadow Lord form, the large Shadow Lord form. In terms of numbers, this guy doesn't even come close. And realize that in that slash that A does, it's not just like an aesthetic that it happens the way that it does. One, she's slicing apart the dimension. Two, she is stopping time. The narwhal broke open to a dimension. Nervalat followed into it. A could just simply go there by pulling the sword. What's stopping A from grabbing Nervalat, teleporting him to a dimension, and then leaving and locking him in? I mean, he needs food to live. Come back 20 minutes later, he's gone. 500 years done past in 20 minutes. Literally the most threatening character in the game. So that's what I have to say about this list. I feel like everything that I said around here, and maybe around here is accurate. Maybe including Sarah. So everything from Sarah up to the Shogun, ironically, because of how close the two are, I feel like confident in this, except for like this down here. These two I feel are confident. This I feel confident in. This I feel somewhat confident in. You can interchange them depending on how you feel she would do in an actual fight with this guy. She's staying where she is, actually. You three are staying where you are. Well, from here, you're staying where you are. And here. Is anyone gonna debate me on Barber tier? I mean, I can make another video on it. So, that is the updated tier list. Wow, we're done. 9 months. It took 9 months for me to do this. 9 months it took for me to start the series and end the first season. So, this recording. Yeah, it's recording. Imagine. So, next video, it's gonna be Diluc versus Tartag. Diluc versus Tartag. I have the numbers. I have some feats ready to go. I just don't have a script or anything on paper yet. So, next video is going to be Diluc versus Tartag. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Anywho, anyways, I'll see you in the next video. And as always, have a good day.